Now, for people just joining, will you say something about the seating arrangement?
Yeah, so we're going to be
Lying down.
quite a number of people in this room. How many of you are just joining us now? Okay. Yeah, so you're okay where you are right now, and I'll tell you where to go when you need to. Generally, it's it would be better if everybody could kind of cluster there so I can see you better. Unless you need to be leaning against the wall or something. But generally, so I don't have to keep going back and I can look at you. But and then you can, when we are doing our meditation, you can go off, because we're going to kind of, with our meditations, some people will be in Shavasana next and some people will be sitting. Yeah, that's better.
Still have to turn your head.
That's okay. So we're going to because there are so many new people joining us again, I'm going to give you a chance to show off your stability and clarity in the first session. So what is the foundation of all your ability to focus? Anybody who was here earlier can answer that. Yes?
Putting your attention on one thing, just one thing.
Yep, that's so that is mindfulness. And what is it that is going to? So how do you, as a foundation for mindfulness, how do you go about doing that? Does the stern? Yes.
Relaxation.
Relaxation, Elizabeth says, is the Bob.
Like an object.
Right. So I guess I'd better. So you guys are all showing off. Great. So all of those are right. And so just so that you all, to add a little structure to that, your ability to remain focused on an object of your choice. So you first of all are going to choose an object, but and there are strategies for that. But relaxation is the fundamental for being able to stay focused on an object. So we do, because our contemporary society is all based on stepping onto and staying on the hedonic treadmill, where you're just grasping at one stimulus after another. We need to do a little remedial relaxation, perhaps, very likely. And so what is the most relaxed of the 4 positions that the Buddha authorized us to meditate in? Shavasana, the supine position. So not only is it okay to meditate in Shavasana, but you must meditate in Shavasana. You must master that position because it is the most relaxed of all the positions. And so we begin to notice that there is a big relationship between distraction and an absence of relaxation or tension. So relaxation, establishing a base of relaxation, is fundamental for establishing stability in our meditation. So we start by doing, so what is the object for really deepening relaxation? What's the best object? The breath. And tactile sensations specifically. And what is it that, so we're focusing, first of all, we establish a base of relaxation by choosing tactile sensations as the object of our mindful attention. And we do that, then the Buddha said, Asanga said, Pabanka Rinpoche said, if your attention is afflicted with excitation, what is the best object? The breath. And that has two unique qualities. What are those? It's,
Constant and changing.
it's constant enough and changing enough. So that those two different qualities, you guys are really good. You weren't falling asleep and you weren't thinking of you weren't off in the past or the future. Way to go. So the breath is really a good object because it supports stability by being constant enough from time 1 to time 2, so that watchfulness can let you know whether you're on the same object or not, or whether you have left in distraction. And it's also changing enough, so it's changing just enough so that you can actually watch the change as it's happening. And so you can also notice if there are gaps in your watching. If you come back and you notice that, the breath has changed, meaning that I missed an inhalation. Mostly it would be I missed an exhalation. We'll talk more about that. So we give our, first of all, we establish a base of relaxation. The problem is that we are usually associate relaxation with sleep, dullness, because that's what we do every night. And that's why many teachers have said never try to meditate in Shavasana because you're training your mind to dullness. Well, that's just the association that we have. It's a habit. And so what we need to do is to join the fight, and because it's so important to relaxation as a base of focus, being able to sustain focus, that we have to conquer that association of deep relaxation and dullness immediately as a fundamental. So we've done that. We have established a base of relaxation. We have balance. And so how do we do that? We notice the degree of clarity that we have at the beginning of our meditation. And we are deepening our relaxation through the first part of the meditation. And what happens if we notice that we're headed off towards drowsiness? What do we do? Inhale clarity. So we inhale, we deepen our relaxation on the exhalation, and we brighten our attention on the inhalation. And so far, that's all I have said about that. And could be a mysterious thing. Could be a placebo effect. But it works. But it's not. And then it's helpful so mindfulness in the tradition of Shamatha is your active present moment of attention focused on an object of your choice. We have chosen the breath because the Buddha, Asanga, and Pabonka Rinpoche said that was the best for excitation, which 99.9 of us have a problem with. Larry's the only one here who has dullness as a problem. Probably not. But that's not a problem today for him, even though he was up late. So we have balance, relaxation, and clarity. We have chosen our object, and then of tactile sensations of the breath. And so then we choose, because we have a choice of objects that exist on a continuum of coarse to subtle. And so we chose the most coarse object to begin with, which is tactile sensations of the breath at the abdomen. And so that's an easy one to find because of especially in Shavasana, because of the rise and fall of the abdomen. Okay. And then, so I said that is that coherent enough for those of you who just arrived to move on now? Okay. So there are two very important qualities for developing stability. So stability is the first 4 of these 9 levels of Master Kamala Shila. So for the first, all of today, basically, we are working on stability. And there are two very important qualities for developing stability. The first is mindfulness. That's your ability to place your object on your active present moment of attention focused on an object of your choice. So there's a sustaining of it on your chosen object. So there's something else that is absolutely essential for allowing mindfulness to work. And that is what Geshe Michael translates as watchfulness, sometimes called introspection, also the same term. And at some point, it will be helpful to think of it, even if it's not a literal translation, as introspective awareness. So this watchfulness, then, is quality control, really, of your mindfulness. So it is going to tell you whether you are on the road or not. Let's see. So at this point, it's it lets you know usually after the fact. So we're in the metaphor of driving down the road. Watchfulness is usually at the very beginning going to alert you to the fact that you are in the ditch, meaning you have gone off in excitation, or you have fallen asleep. So usually at the very beginning, because you are only able to, at level 1, your directed attention, you are only able to keep your attention on your chosen object for a few seconds. So usually its watchfulness will be like the tow truck at this point. There are a number of metaphors we're going to be using for watchfulness, but it seems at this point it's really a tow truck, because it's coming to let you know that you are in the ditch. It doesn't really apply the antidote. You have to get yourself out, but so maybe that's not the best metaphor for it. But you have left the road. You are in the ditch. So it's really the quality control. What's the quality of my mindfulness? Is it headed towards excitation, or no? Am I in the ditch of excitation at this point, or have I fallen asleep? So coarse excitation in either of these ditches, you have left the road, meaning that you have lost your object completely. So coarse excitation feels like a scattering of your attention, a fragmentation. And coarse dullness feels like a contraction of your attention into the recesses of your mind. So you can think of this as a radio station. So with coarse dullness, it would be like, I don't know if it's possible to do this I suppose, somewhere out on the East Coast, at least if you're headed out into the ocean or something, where you tune to 91.5 on your radio dial, and you're headed somewhere into the wilds anyway, and the radio station fades out altogether. There's no signal. So that must happen headed to the Berkshires or something, right?
Happens around here.
Does it? Oh, yeah.
We're already there.
Yeah, all right. So you're already there, so this is the radio station just fades out altogether. There's no signal. So you're tuned to 91.5 National Public Radio or something, and you go around, enter another cove probably, and there's no signal. That's coarse dullness. Your attention just contracts into itself, and it is unaware of anything. There are a couple of things that happen along the way that we'll talk about. But coarse excitation is just the opposite. You tune to 91.5, and sometimes, in places where you have a lot of radio stations, you actually get crosstalk, right? And so you're tuned to 91.5 National Public Radio. You go around a bend, enter another cove, and National Public Radio all of a sudden fades out altogether, and in comes Rush Limbaugh. So let's just say anyway so the being, meaning that you have chosen an object to be in, you've tuned to a station that you want, and then all of a sudden you are tuned to a station that you don't want. Right, so let's just say that we're rush limbo. So that's coarse dullness. You know, so you do have something. It's not as if you lost the radio signal altogether, but now it's one that you haven't chosen. And so you can say coarsely that coarse excitation is like someone sneaks up behind you with a chloroform rag and then throws you in, knocks you out and throws you into the trunk of their car and then takes you off someplace like, I don't know where here. Used to be someplace, where's someplace that you wouldn't want to go here?
Over the bridge.
Someplace over the bridge. Right? You wake up on the other side of the bridge. Yeah. And you go, how did I get here? I certainly didn't intend to come here, because who would want to go over the bridge? I certainly didn't intend to go over the bridge, but here I am. How the hell did I get here? And that's the way that coarse excitation is like. In Sacramento, so I used to say abducted or kidnapped with the chloroform rag, but in Sacramento, they have Old Sacramento, and which is a collection of Gold Rush era buildings that are still preserved. And there's a plaque on the side of an old saloon that says, "This is so-and-so bar, and this is the place where miners would bring in their gold dust, trade it for whiskey." And then when they ran out of gold dust, they would be they would be so drunk that they would be just thrown through this trap door behind the bar. And then they would be given something stronger, and then they would wake up on a ship to China. The origin of the term Shanghai. And so that's the term that I use now. You have been shanghaied in coarse distraction. And so you are gone for about 10 minutes, so you're focusing on tactile sensations of the breath. And all of a sudden you're gone for 10 minutes. You wake up on the other side of the bridge and you wonder, how did I get here? You have no idea. It's like waking up from a non-lucid dream, right? It's like these images, it's only the last image waving goodbye to you in the rearview mirror. And that's all you're aware of, is the image that you woke up to. And then maybe you can reconstruct, let's see, before that, I remember there was the grating going up, no, the trunk opened. Let's see, okay, and then before that there was the bridge grating or something that got my attention, kind of woke me up. But wow, that's it, So that's what being shanghaied is like, your coarse excitation. You are non-lucid. You're cognitively fused with your distraction, meaning that you're not aware of the train of associations that lead you to the other side of the bridge, because you're non-lucid dreaming, basically. So that is what we are trying to do, is with our development of stability, is to remain lucidly awake, so that we notice when we are before we are being shanghaied, as we are leaving our object. So level 1, Shamatha level 1, directed attention, you all have done now. You have located your object, which was tactile sensations of the breath at the abdomen, and you were able to stay there for some degree of time. Level 2, usually a few seconds, minimum of a few seconds. Level 2 then, directed continuous attention. You are actually able to maintain your attention on your chosen object for about a minute. Pabanka Rinpoche says for the length of time to do a full mala of a short mantra. So, it's about a minute. So that's a substantial increase from a few seconds to a minute. And a lot of us would be very happy with that. because you can do a lot with 1 minute of really focused attention. Geshe Michael, in one of the last of the Tantra courses, when we're talking about the subject was Shamatha in Tantra, basically, he said that he guessed that most of his tantric students couldn't keep their attention on the breath for 30 seconds. So he said most can. So that's, you know, on the way to, it's not graduated from level 2. So that's between level 1 and level 2. So it's a big deal to be able to stay on your object for a full minute. So what's the key for getting from level 1 to level 2? The key is that you can't become bored with your object. So what does that mean? Clarity is key to stability at that point. Getting from level 1 to level 2, you need clarity. So how do you do that? So how do you not become bored with your object? In the New York subways, when I was there a month ago, there all of a sudden appeared, you know how they do in the subways, all of these advertising campaigns, and whole subway cars are just filled with, you know, the placards of one product. So this one got into the subway one time, and the message was, "Only the boring are bored." And it was an advertisement for Cole Haan shoes. And so the Cole Haan's solution for boredom was either the lime green pumps or the orange loafers. Because obviously you could not be boring if you were wearing those, and so you wouldn't be bored. Well, you could try that, you know, again. Because you've tried that before, right? And that didn't work. So how many pairs of those pumps and loafers do you have in your closet? But here's my provocative hypothesis. It's impossible to be bored if your mind is clear, meaning if it has clarity. And that's almost by definition, because clarity means engagement with your object. But so try this. Next time you're feeling bored, so this is like a distraction, right? So the next time you are distracted, you can try the furrowed brow approach, the mental isometric, or you can try relaxation. So the relaxation is going to work. The mental isometric will not. The mental isometric will increase your distraction. Next time you are bored, you can try the hedonic pleasure, one after another, or including the Cole Haan shoes, or you can try to ramp up clarity. And how do you do that? On the inhalation. So the inhalation is the antidote to boredom. That's weird. So if you turn off, basically, if you decide to limit, to really focus, because we are in this culture on the hedonic treadmill, right, where it is just stimulus, stimulus, stimulus. So if we decide to turn off that valve of hedonic pleasure and focus on one thing, are we guaranteeing our boredom? Cole Haan would like us to believe that. So I tried this years ago, many years ago, when I was spending most of my life in the mountains in Washington and the Himalayas. One of my favorite things to do was to go on these long wilderness ski trips in the Pasayten Wilderness, which is just below 1.25 million acres, just below the Canadian border in the North Cascades. So a couple of buddies and I would go out for 30 days, in the dead of winter to places that had never been seen by humans before, not Indians or trappers. And you know, and just put in a base camp, build an igloo, and then ski all the peaks, you know, in the area, and then move on, you know, spend a week there and move on. So one of these places that we were at, a storm blew in that was the famous storm that blew down the Hood Canal Bridge. And this was out in Puget Sound, and so that was, you know, there were 110 mile an hour winds or something like that out there. So we were weathered into our tent for 3 full days in a whiteout. And so we each had brought one book, and then we would rip the book in half and then pass it on to somebody else, you know. And so somebody had passed me Catch 22. And so I was, you know, spending days in the tent reading Catch 22. And there was a part where Yossarian has come up with this kooky idea of if you want to extend your life, what you need to do is to cultivate boredom. So being in a perverse mood, I thought, wow, we've been in here 2 days. How can I turn this into a week? So I think I'm going to cultivate boredom. You know, what would be the most boring thing that I could do right now? Because I was really enjoying myself. What would be the most boring thing I could do right now? So I thought, I'm going to count the stitches in this diagonal seam of the tent. And so I got out a sharp pen, you know, so because the stitches were very small. Counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time I got to 12, I noticed something really weird is happening. I was not getting bored, just the opposite. I was just totally engaged and feeling bright, and this surge of clarity. It was because of the stability required of that attention, because it was so small, the stitches were so small that I really had to focus. So anyway, it was only 3 days in the tent rather than 7, you know, because of my clarity. And so that's the provocative hypothesis. I want you to check it out in the same way that I ran my empirical study. So if you are bored, inhale clarity and see what happens. And that is the way then, so clarity is the way that you are going to get to level 2, because you have to remain fascinated enough with your object, the breath, to get you to a level of stability that then does something else. So once you get to that degree of stability, then you begin to develop a synergetic spiral. Because that degree of clarity that produced the stability then produces, just like counting the stitches of a tent, greater clarity. So at about that point, that's exactly what you're doing. You're developing that synergetic spiral. Your interest in your object is helping to keep you stable for a sufficient length of time that stability really begins to produce more clarity. So, I've said that mindfulness and watchfulness are 2 very important aspects of developing this stability. So, watchfulness is a difficult thing. How does that work? So, at one point I said it was the tow truck. Usually it's described as, in the early stages, as a sentry. So this sentry, because it's a corner of your mind, right, is the way that it's often described. A corner of your mind that you dedicate to checking in as a sentry periodically to, you know, check to see whether you are in the left ditch or the right ditch. Have you lost your object to excitation or to dullness? So in this, how often is the sentry checking in? About, you know, every 6, 7 breaths, something like that. The sentry is making its rounds. And if you are still on your object, if it recognizes the breath and it recognizes that you are not asleep, then it calls, "All is well, you're still on the road," and goes, moves around, on its next, checking the perimeter again, and it'll come back. So at this point, it has to be periodic that it's checking in, because if it's too upfront, that becomes the object of your meditation then. That becomes a distraction. So you can say that, mindfulness starts as a tow truck and then a sentry. Or you could say that in the sentry, it becomes something of a rumble strip on the side of the road then, right? That rumble strip saved my life, I don't know how many times, driving home from Diamond Mountain at 3 a.m. I would wake up and realize that it was, either, hopefully it was the right ditch because I hadn't crossed the left lane to get to the other ditch. But so it alerts you that you're about to go into the ditch. So that's kind of the evolution. Watchfulness, as you go through the levels of stability, watchfulness really has to evolve its capability to begin to alert you before you end up in the ditch, before you're shanghaied and you wake up across the bridge and wonder, how did I get here? So it's before you, when you are just being thrown into the trunk, you say, no, I'm not, no way am I going across the bridge. Forget it, dude. So this is, watchfulness is defined as the repeated examination of your state, of your body and mind. So that can be, your watchfulness can alert you about your posture, also on the level of your chin. But it's mostly, am I in one of the ditches? So focusing attention on the physical sensations of the breath at the abdomen is very good for relaxation, because it's a coarse physical sensation, a coarse tactile object. So this would be a very good meditation to do when you're stressed out. If you are stressed out, let's just say that you either gave a performance review or had a performance review, either from a boss or your spouse, and then you decide to sit down to meditate, and that's all that is filling your mind, and so are you going to choose a subtle object at that time? It's probably going to work a lot better to choose a coarse object, something that is really going to get your attention. So Shavasana abdomen would be a really good choice of meditation positions and objects to choose for that. So that's you begin, once you have this full arsenal of tools, like you'll have it by the end of the day tomorrow, not an arsenal but a toolbox, you will be able to determine, watchfulness will just ask, what is it that my attention needs right now? And you will choose the position to meditate in and the object of your meditation based on whether you need relaxation or clarity. So the issue then, so relaxation is really, really good for that distracted mind. What happens if you are dull? You need to choose a position that is going to promote clarity. So either the seated position is very good for that because there's the more muscular tension in it. And then you can do something else. So the thing that, there is a tradition in Burma that uses only the breath at the abdomen as its meditation object all the way through all 9 stages of Shamatha progression. You know, that's all they need. But the experience of most meditators is that if you stay focused, if you remain focused on a coarse object, coarse tactile sensation, it will promote dullness, or you know that it can lead to dullness. So it's very good for relaxation, but watch out for the dullness, right? That makes sense. So it is in our progression then through Shamatha. The whole progression is from coarse to more subtle in a lot of ways. And here what we're going to be doing is moving to a more subtle tactile sensation of the breath. And that is the tactile sensations of the breath at the rim of the nostrils or the tip of the nose. That is a lot more subtle than the coarse movement of the abdomen. There are a number of reasons for moving from coarse to subtle. One is, as my friend, 75-year-old shamatician in Los Angeles, Marv Trieger says, it's like you go to archery class, and so the instructor tells you, here's the bow, here's the arrow, you do it like this, there's your target. And the target is the broad side of the barn. And so you let fly, and wow, I hit the target. And so you keep drawing the bow and aiming, and because you're getting good results, you're hitting the target every time. You get a pat on the back and all of that. While you are working on the broad side of the barn, you are realizing that, you're beginning to realize some techniques here. I relax my fingers on the knock fingers there, and just the string just kind of flies out of my fingers. Or, oh, this bow is a 65-pound draw. I need a 35-pound draw, something like that. So while you are working with the broad side of the barn, you're still in the game. It keeps you in the game. It gives you success. And so you're able to figure out all of these other details. And so finally, you're got all of the mechanics figured out, and your arrow group gets smaller and smaller. And then the instructor winks at you and says, okay, now I'm bringing out a smaller target. And that then gives you something really to really aim these new techniques. So there's value in that. It just keeps you in the game, while you're figuring out the mechanics of stability. So there's another reason also, and that is that when you move from a coarse object at the tactile sensations of the abdomen to the more subtle sensations at the tip of the nose, because it is a more subtle sensation, if you are just going to achieve Shamatha level 1, what's that? Find your object. It requires a more acute attention. And so because your attention is more acute, it reveals a more fascinating object. And that more fascinating object keeps your attention. And that promotes, so that stability then promotes clarity. This is the synergetic virtuous upward spiral that happens. Your choice of a more subtle object requires more acute attention, reveals a more fascinating object, and so it keeps your attention more stably on your object. So by demanding more of your attention, you experience a more stable meditation. And this happens only if we have chosen tactile sensations as our object. So if you were just counting the breath, for instance, that wouldn't do it, because there's no range of coarse to subtle in counting. Also, the experience of many these generations of meditators is that a mental image won't do it, because there's no degree of coarse sensation, coarse to dull, or coarse to subtle with the mental image. So it's there. So this is also why the breath is such a good object, because if you had chosen a mental image as your object of mindfulness, it can be weeks before you reach level 1 of Shamatha, where you can say that you actually have found your object, because you have to construct it. And also, most of those mental images are conceptual mental images, which we'll go into more on Monday, that distinction. So anyway, that's why we move at this point. Now that you have established a base of relaxation, balanced with relaxation, your relaxation with clarity, given yourself a coarse target at the abdomen, then we move on to the more subtle tactile sensations, because it's going to really promote stability. So to develop stability, then, when we do that meditation shortly, you need to develop a new reflex. Whenever you notice that you have been shanghaied and you wake up on the other side of the bridge, you could do one of two things. You could try. So guess what? Guess what the job? What does the stern dad do when he goes to work every day? He's a dog trainer. And so he trains dogs to heel. And so he tries that. Heel. I told you to stay. How many times do I have to tell you, stay? Get back here. So you can try that approach. When you discover that you've been shanghaied, you wake up on the other side of the bridge. And this is what, we typically do. We become very disappointed with ourselves. My meditation I do this every day. I'm never getting anywhere with this thing, I think I just don't know how to do this. Maybe it's my teacher, No, it's me. Other people have learned to meditate, etc. You beat yourself up. What you do is you jerk on the leash, and then you demand, furrow your brow and demand stay. So don't do that. Why? Because you're going in the wrong direction. The tension of doing that is going to increase distraction. What you need to do is to relax. So you woke up on the other side of the bridge. What is your response? You need to have a new reflex, which is the 3 R's. I lied a little bit about the chloroform rag, because that implies that we are an innocent victim, right? That some terrorist came up behind and took me on a distraction. The interesting thing is that according to most of the texts, the thing that will distract us most often is a desirous object. It will take us more frequently and for longer period over the bridge. So it wouldn't be over the bridge. What it would be to Halibut Point or wherever to see the sunset. So it's a place you want to go rather than a place you don't want to go. And that makes it tougher to say no. So what you do then, your first response is to release. The first R is to release your grasp on the distracting object. Because guess what? you have been a willing abductee. So your first response is to release, then you return to your chosen object, and then you relax more deeply on the next exhalation. So you release, return, relax. So that needs to become your reflex. And so that's quite a discursive process. You wake up at halibut point, and you then go, oh, I need to get back to my breath right away. Don't do that. Go through these 3 steps. So sure, it's a discursive process. Sure, it is distraction. It is not tactile sensation. But hey, you've been distracted for 10 minutes already. So what this will do is it will really shorten it'll prolong the time that you are stable on your object again, and it's beginning to train your attention, or it's beginning to train your awareness, I should say. So go through, very consciously, release, and feel that. And then consciously return to your chosen object. Oh yeah, my chosen object is tactile sensations at the nose. And then very consciously deepen your relaxation on the next out breath, because the problem was a temporary lack of relaxation. And that's always what grasping involves, is tension. And then here is another one. So this is a golden key. This is one in your notes. You should put 3 exclamation points and 2 stars and a happy face. Like this one. The key to stability is the exhalation. Here is I gave you a provocative hypothesis before that you're going to empirically test. That was that it's impossible to be bored if you are inhaling clarity. Here's another one. You will never lose your object on the inhalation. Prove me wrong. So if that's true, and it's the experience of generations of meditators, if that's true, what you really need to focus on is your exhalation. If excitation is your issue, what you do is you redouble your focus on your exhalation from the very beginning all the way to the final instant. And if you can notice the pause between breaths, if you give your attention that destination, I am going to make it to the pause before the next inhalation spontaneously the weight of the atmosphere spontaneously fills my lungs again. I am going to get there and recognize it when I get there. You have a free ride for, you can relax because you've got it made through the inhalation. You won't lose your object through the inhalation. Just check that out and see if that's true or not. So the key to stability is the exhalation. And then counting may be helpful to you, or maybe not. So for some people it can be helpful, for some people that can become a distraction. If it has always been a distraction, it's probably because you have been counting in the wrong way. So the thing that you don't want to do is to drone the count. 1, 2, 3. So you're proving to yourself that you can count to 10. That's something, but that is not shamatha, or it may not lead to shamatha either. But so what you do is because it's too up front, that becomes your object, right? And so what you do, if you are going to use the breath, punctuate. Just punctuate what? The final moment of the exhalation. At the pause. 1, 2. So that gives your attention another destination, right? I have made it all the way to the final moment of the exhalation, and I have proved it by recognizing this count. So that could be very helpful, and if you haven't tried it that way, give that a shot, because it just, it really does reinforce or give a more prominent destination to your attention, which is focused on the exhalation. And then, you count from 1 to 10. And if you lose your count, start over again at 1. And if you make it to 10, I'd say just give up counting. You don't need it. And then just focus on tactile sensations. And then one last thing before we venture into this meditation. So the subtle object of the tactile sensations of the breath at the tip of the nose can become so subtle as you become still, as your attention becomes still, the volume of air moving just becomes very small also. These sensations can become so subtle that you no longer feel them. So what do you do then? Felt that. No, don't do that. What you do is you make your attention more acute. There is sensation there, but it needs to become more vivid. Your attention needs to become more vivid. And there are 2 different types of vividness. One is a temporal and one is a qualitative. We'll talk about the temporal later, but the qualitative is that you can feel things that you couldn't feel before. That before it was below a threshold of being palpable, now it is above. So your attention is becoming more qualitatively vivid. So that's what you want to do when you can't feel sensations anymore at the tip of the nose, is to make your attention more vivid. And a good way of doing that is by recalibrating your attention at the pause. When there is no movement of air, in or out, just reset the acuity of your attention to that pause, and then notice the first sensations that come after that, and that will do it. You'll then be able to feel sensations of the in-breath and out-breath again. So, yeah, that's the way to do that. So we will take a short break while we're getting set up for our meditation. If you need to use the restroom, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we'll be doing a meditation. You have the choice, again, of doing this meditation in Shavasana or seated position. And in the seated position, I think you all are quite familiar with that. You can choose either a cushion on the floor or sitting in a chair is perfectly good. And if you're doing long periods of meditation, as in a retreat, you'll just be rotating between positions every 24-minute session that you're doing. You'll do one session on the floor, so I'd like to do most of mine on the floor, but you do a session in Shavasana, then seated position, walking meditation, whatever. So all of them are really good positions, and you should practice with all of them. But if you are in a chair, don't sit back against the back. Come out to the edge of the chair. And that will help keep your spine erect then and give you that clarity of kind of relying on your muscles. And chairs are always built in the wrong direction. They're always sloping from front to back, the bucket. Cars are the worst. Except for Kari's car, which can electronically go like that with the seat. Right? But most chairs, they put your pelvis into the wrong position so that you're kind of slumping. So you can put a cushion on your chair also to help roll your pelvis forward and to keep your spine straight. And if your legs are too short to reach the floor, then you can put another cushion under your feet. If you're seated on the floor, and the whole idea is just to be comfortable, to park your body so that you're not going to be thinking about it. Full lotus position. I don't know anybody who meditates in full lotus or even half lotus. This one is this is called Siddhasana in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and Master Swatmarama says this is the most important asana of all asanas, because asana is all intended as this progression. You're headed to Raja Yoga meditation anyway. So this one is very, very stable, and it has some subtle body things about it also. But basically, or you can just put your foot in front, but it should be comfortable. And then you should also, especially if you're meditating for longer periods, like in a retreat, you should also be able to put your left foot on top as well as your right foot, because that changes your alignment a bit. And if you get knee pain after 5 sessions with your right foot on, you'll notice that the pain goes away when it put that foot on the bottom. Or you might. I do. And then your head is you're looking straight ahead. So you're not looking to the left or to the right. Your head isn't tilted to one shoulder or the other. And then, very importantly, because we're talking, the whole point is clarity and excitation, or the absence of excitation is stability. The absence of dullness is clarity. So this elevation here turns out to be extremely important. So all of you, I just want you to experiment with that now. Just close your eyes and then lower your chin towards your chest slowly, and just notice what happens. Right about here, I'm about ready to snore. And then try just the opposite. Raise your chin up towards the ceiling. And just notice that what feels like a scattering of attention also. So very important, when watchfulness alerts you that you are either, the rumble strip is waking you up, or letting you know that you're about to leave the road in the left ditch. One of the things to do is to check the level of your chin and also your posture. So especially if you're dull, typically what happens is that. So both your chin is dropping, your shoulders have slumped forward, your back has collapsed. So watchfulness will alert you to that also. But those are really just the basics of the seated position. So if you need to use the restroom, go ahead, or otherwise prepare your favorite seat or position. So Shavasana is not only okay, but it's encouraged.
Are you sure?
Release all fantasies of the future and all memories of the past. And withdraw your attention from the room and the surroundings into the domain of your body. Focusing there on tactile sensations only. Note first that feeling of solidity where your body contacts the floor. Now let your attention roam throughout the body, noting tactile sensations wherever they arise, whether it be an itch on the surface of the skin, or some trembling or flutter in a deep tissue. And if you notice any pain or any tension, let your breath be drawn to it as if magnetically. And then release that pain or tension on the out breath, deepening your relaxation as if with an inaudible sigh. Note the amount of clarity that you have at the beginning of your meditation. And if you notice that your attention is slipping towards dullness and drowsiness, revive the quality of your attention, brighten it on the inhalation. Now, having established a base of relaxation and balanced relaxation with clarity, we will begin to add stability by focusing on tactile sensations of the breath. Take 3 deep, full breaths and note the tactile sensations of the breath wherever they arise in the body. Now give your attention a target by focusing on the tactile sensations at the abdomen. Giving your full moment-to-moment bare attention to the rise and fall of the abdomen as the breath enters and leaves your body. Use only those tactile sensations to note the beginning and the end of each in-breath and out-breath. Now shift your attention to the more subtle tactile sensations of the breath at the tip of the nose. Let your attention be a stable gatekeeper there, noting the passage of the air in and out, but remaining itself unmoved. If watchfulness alerts you that your attention has been shanghaied, your reflex is to release your grasp on the distracting object. Return to your chosen object, tactile sensations of the breath at the tip of the nose, and relax ever more deeply on the next out. The key to stability is the exhalation. Give it your full attention to the final instant at the pause before the next inhalation. you can count your breath. That is helpful. Deepen your relaxation with each exhalation. Brighten your clarity with each inhalation. So expand your attention again to the room. If you're in supine position, you can wiggle your toes and your fingers and stretch. And then without losing your clarity and stability, return to your seat. Are there any questions or comments about that experience?
Do you hold your breath at the top or just bottom? Bottom and top breath too.
Did you say hold your breath?
I mean, not hold your breath, but pause.
Oh, so you don't actually pause, and thanks for asking that question. So you don't pause consciously, but you know to pause. So you typically will know to pause. There will be a pause between however brief, between the inhalation and the exhalation. It's like slack tide, right? Which brings up, thank you for asking that, because that's something that I haven't mentioned yet. So first of all, we settle the body in its natural state. And then we do that with relaxation. That natural state is imbued with the three qualities of relaxation, stillness and vigilance. And then we settle the breath in its natural state. The thing that I haven't mentioned is that we give up all control of the breath and let the body breathe itself. So there's no pranayama involved in this shamatha practice. And that's, again, it seems like it's such a very elementary thing, but it's like noting tactile sensations with bare attention. It's deceptive. Is it a mental overlay or is it a tactile sensation? Is it a mental map of my body or is that an authentic tactile sensation? So it's interesting the number of people that tell me they have difficulty giving up all control of the breath because, we've been trained. One of my first dear meditation teachers gave me this extraordinary technique of noticing the heartbeats in my eyelid and then calibrating my breath by counting the heartbeats and doing 5. So for each breath would be 5 heartbeats. And then you would notice that you needed to kind of consciously extend your exhalation in order to equalize it. So we don't do any of that. You just let the body breathe itself. So it's interesting that very efficient managers report the most difficulty with doing that. People who are, used to be taking charge and, knowing how to get things done, sometimes report that it's difficult just to let the breath do what it wants, because it's just a function of this egoic structure that it will control anything that it can. And the breath is something that can very easily be controlled. And so we notice that because it can be controlled, we will control it. I'll take charge of this, and I will equalize the out-breath. I will make it shallow and long. I hear that it's cool to stop your breath. No, so don't do any of that. And you are giving up all control of the breath. And more, easily said than done. Any other questions? Comments? Yes.
I noticed that my thoughts went to dying because, not in an afflicted way, but just like trying to just let the breath be. That was sort of a thing that comes up for me. So what I told myself in order to do that was to think about just letting go. The process, I have these ideas, about the breath. It's the last thing we have. It's my idea. So somehow that was comforting. But I also really connected with what you just said, because it's so easy to get into control of the breath. And because I associate it with relaxation. There's a certain way I need to breathe to relax. So it's very easy when we're talking about relaxation to make those associations.
Yeah. So Joel, hear that? So she was noticing that as she gave up control of the breath, because I hadn't even emphasized that, but she was doing it spontaneously, or knew that was something she should do. She noticed this feeling of a sense of death, right? So that's interesting, isn't it? That even the ego could, so giving up control of the death would feel like giving up control of the breath could feel like a kind of a first step towards an ego death. just giving up even that. It's like if the narrator doesn't exist, do I exist? And if the story that the narrator is telling me, if I quiet that, does the world even exist? Will I know anything of the world without this narrator telling me the story of it? And then, of course, that narrator is telling me who I am too, and what my mind is. That's all a conceptual narration also, as we will really begin to discover tomorrow. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
I had that feeling like after lunch sleepiness. So I'm thinking, should I have, I chose to sit instead of lie because I thought I'm already relaxed, I'm ready to fall asleep. So I decided to sit instead of lie down. Should I have stood because I still had that after lunch sleepiness?
Well, that would have been your next logical choice, yeah, to stand.
Okay, so I should have maybe done that.
Yeah. But I think you were right to experiment with inhaling clarity. So the interesting thing about that new skill that you have learned about balancing relaxation and clarity and breaking the habitual association of relaxation and dullness is that you can begin to meditate in times that you normally would never have considered. One of my dearest meditation teachers used to insist, don't even try to meditate for 2 hours after eating. It's like going in the water. You'll get cramps, you'll drown. And what she meant was that you'll be dull, because the blood's in your stomach. When you really get with this inhaling clarity, dullness is just not a big issue. Of course, unless you're haven't got enough sleep or something, but I mean, just the ordinary dullness that, like time of day. So I used to, I used to only meditate in the morning, except in retreats, because that's what we were told, that you do your meditation first thing in the morning and for an hour, and then, you go off and have your day. So I'm blessed with having a flexible schedule more of my life now. And so I meditate a lot during the day. Because with this system of meditation, it is just enjoyable. I love meditating now. And so I do it a lot. And sometimes I'll just, instead of, I have a choice of going skiing or meditating, and I'll choose to meditate because it's what I prefer to do. And so just in an ordinary day during the winter when I really am free to do whatever I want, I'll be writing and researching and do maybe typically 8 or so gatakas, 8 24-minute sessions, just scattered throughout the day, just because that's what I like to do. It's just totally fun. And so what I noticed was that so not only did I not drown when I went in the water after lunch, but it was actually some of my most stable meditation. Because the dullness is not such an issue. I could inhale clarity, right? I could have a big lunch and sit right down and have a really stable meditation. So so right after lunch, mid-afternoon, 3:30, when normally you're bottoming out and it seems like your only choice is either to take a nap or have another triple shot of Starbucks, try meditating. Because you're dull. Try meditating because you're dull. And revive your clarity. Just like my friend, in the garment district. who said 5 breaths was all it took to go from flatline to vividness. And it's not that big a deal. You can do it, you can do better. You can do it in a breath, amazingly. So, and evenings also, formally, come home from work, forget it. All I want to do is to relax, right? Well, how do you relax, Watch some trashy television, or, I don't know, have a drink or whatever, I don't know. But how about meditating because you need to relax? No, I'm going to fall asleep. Not anymore. It's interesting that all kinds, all throughout the day, there's no bad time. So if you're prone to excitation, which many of us are, and you're driving down the 2-lane road, so this is why it's a 2-lane road, because you have excitation off here in the left ditch, you have dullness in the right ditch, and you are trying to stay on your object. Which ditch which lane should you be driving in? The left lane or the right lane?
This country, the right.
Yeah. And for most people, what you want to do is to hug, if you're prone to excitation, hug the right ditch. Stay closer to dullness than to excitation, because dullness is easier to deal with. Because you can inhale clarity, and you'll just begin to experience that more and more. That can do it like that. Can revive your clarity. And so the thing about dullness is that it's incremental. You notice it coming on. So it's not like you're there one moment and then you're asleep. But excitation is like that. You're on your object and then you're off your object, like that. It's not an incremental thing. You're either on your object or you're off your object, but you can begin to become dull. And so you can notice that you are beginning to become dull, and then apply the antidote of inhaling clarity. And so stability then can become really enhanced by meditating in times when you were formerly wouldn't even consider because you were too dull. So you're hugging the right ditch by doing that. So if you do that, you may notice that the reason that you have been your meditations have been so distracted, it's because you're meditating first thing in the morning. And we'll talk about that tomorrow and give you a meditation that can really benefit from that. But focusing on tactile sensations may be more difficult because your mind, well, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But just play with this with a 5-minute session after lunch, midday, in the evening, times when you're really would never have considered meditating, and those could be your most stable meditations. You'll be able to bring in enough clarity to have a really stable meditation. So how long is your meditation session? We've talked about, so my favorite now is called the Gataka. It's a length of time that is 24 minutes. This is what Master Kamala Shila recommended. It's in ancient India, it's a sacred length of time. It's 1/60th of the day. It's neither, it's not too short because you can really begin to note changes from beginning to middle to end, but it's not too long. So you can really maintain good focus and so good stability and clarity throughout a session. And you don't just, try to do longer than an hour. It also really kind of obeys Pabanka Rinpoche's great advice that you should stop meditating when you feel really good about meditating. Don't overdo it because you're going to really develop a loathing for your cushion if you overdo it. So do short. The whole secret of developing shamatha is do short, frequent sessions. So in retreat, I like these 24-minute sessions. You do 24 minutes, take a 6-minute break, another 24-minute session, 6-minute break. And then you just chain these together, and you can easily do 8 hours of meditation, all spot on. It's an amazing system that works really, really well for anybody. And just every report that I get after retreat is that people are dazzled by the system is very much a part of it. So is a meditation session 24 minutes? Or is it 1 hour? Or is it neither of those? I think it's most helpful to think of the length of your meditation session as being one cycle of in-breath and out-breath. That is your full session. That really keeps you in the present moment. If you're thinking 24 minutes, and then you begin to think, God, I've been sitting here for quite some time. I wonder if I actually forgot to start the timer. So you, 3 minutes left. So if your session were 24 minutes and you saw that there was 3 minutes left, you go, well, that's pretty much it, I'm pretty, that's done. But if your session is one cycle of in-breath and out-breath, and you see you have 3 minutes, it's like, wow, 3 minutes, that's 30 sessions, And then every session, you have a chance to do a, level 5, level 6, Shamatha session, So what if you were totally distracted last session? This is a brand new session. So it gives you a freedom, it's all discovery. And it keeps you in the present moment of discovering what each of these sessions are. Because you can't define the session by how it's going or how it did go, for the last 10 minutes. You can't define the session as, oh, I'm having a lousy meditation session. I'm having a distracted meditation session. And so what you notice is that, my God, it varies from session to session. It can, And you can then really begin to experience what real, stable, vivid meditation is like. And then chain together a number of those sessions, a number of those minutes. And that's how you get, to stage 2, where you're on your object for a full minute. Not losing your object completely for a full minute. So when we do that, so when we recognize that our meditation session is one cycle of in-breath and out-breath, it opens up a whole new world of meditation to us. So when you recognize that dullness has arisen, you immediately apply the antidote, which is to inhale clarity. When you notice that you're headed to excitation, you immediately apply the antidote, which is you focus on the exhalation. So this is called so what you're doing is you're balancing relaxation and invigoration on each cycle of in-breath and out-breath. This is called the Padmasambhava oscillation. Sounds like a meteorological term, but this is describing a really powerful meditation technique. That you are, on every in-breath, you are inhaling clarity. On every out-breath, you are deepening your relaxation. And so the mind always wants something to do. The mind abhors a vacuum, right? So the mind always wants something to do. And this gives the mind just enough to do to keep it really fully engaged. And you notice it's like being out on one of the beaches rather than the rocky shore, so like Long Beach. So you notice that the surge of the tidal surge comes onto the beach, and then it recedes back into the ocean. And it comes on, and it recedes. So you notice that about your level of clarity, is that it also, it's like tidal surge in, and then relaxation on the out-breath. Invigorate your clarity on the in-breath, and then relax more deeply on the out-breath. And that fascination with that increase, of the oscillation of clarity and relaxation will really keep your attention engaged, because every session is brand new. Your session, because you are regarding your session as being one cycle of in-breath and out-breath, you can really practice the Padmasambhava oscillation. And that creates very stable and vivid attention. So how does that work? I just have been curious, what's up with that excitation and relaxation on the in-breath and out-breath? Is that placebo effect like 40% of the effect of antidepressants is? Is it, because placebo effect is really, really powerful. You suggest, if I tell you that's the way it works, it'll work for you, right? Maybe that's what's happened for 2,500 years. That Buddha just said, exhale, deepen your relaxation, inhale, brighten your clarity. And for 2,500 years, people have believed it, and we have been benefiting from the placebo effect. That's one possibility. The other possibility could lie in, so this is a universal thing that seems to be recognized. Just had, for the last month or so, I've been very fortunate to spend some time in New York and then in Asheville for 2 weeks with Mira Shani, who's just a fabulous yoga teacher. And she was really emphasizing during the retreat, she was doing yoga sessions, and she was really emphasizing what she was calling brightening on the inhalation during yoga, and then softening on the exhalation. Do you brighten the interior, soften the exterior? And I thought, wow, that is really a brilliant adaptation of yoga to what I was teaching in the retreat. And she said, no, that's been my emphasis for 7 years. So it's, so I didn't invent it, Mira didn't invent it, Padmasambhava didn't even invent it. Somebody sent me about 2 months ago now an article that was from The Guardian of all places. And this was an article about new research on a phenomena called vagal toning, or vagal toning index. So the vagus nerve is a major nerve. Everybody's nodding because this does, how important this is. The vagus nerve runs from, it's key to the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and runs from wherever, center in the brain, and has branches that run through to all of the major organs, the heart, the lungs, the digestive organs, and its job is to speed up these organs in a fight or flight situation, or to then slow it down, slow all of these organs down when everything is okay, when there's no threat. So it speeds up and slows down. So that's been known for a long time. So one of the interesting things, so this vagal toning index, this is the new research that, so the people who have a high vagal tone index all have, are less prone to disease of all sorts. So they have fewer heart attacks, fewer strokes, fewer common colds. They also report more positive thoughts So in positive psychology, they say that you need, the ratio, the sweet spot is 3 to 1 or greater, right? So people who have a high vagal tone index report having more positive thoughts, and the negative thoughts that they have just don't throw them. They come and they go, and they're not really thrown off balance by them. Well, this sounds like, the stock market index or something for both health and happiness, doesn't it? So where do I get some of this vagal tone index? I went all over Brooklyn. I went to Chinatown. I went to Little Italy. I went to every little market asking for vagal tone index. Where could I get some? Because I want to be happy and healthy. And nobody had any vagal tone index. There was none of it on Amazon. Where do you get this? What is this vagal tone index? The vagal tone index is a description of the change of your heart rate between the inhalation and the exhalation. So there is an increase, a subtle increase in the heart rate on the inhalation, and there's a subtle decrease on the exhalation. You are inhaling clarity, inhale brightness, as Mira says, inside, and you exhale, you soften on the exhalation. This seems to be just the way that our neuroanatomy is set up. And this is why it works. And this is why every breath has a potential for doing that, of really brightening your attention every in-breath and deepening your relaxation. And so you notice, so that's the thing about the Padmasambhava oscillation. You notice the difference between the amount of clarity that you have on the in-breath, and you notice how much you are relaxing on the out-breath. So with this metaphor of driving down a 2-lane highway and maintaining your full mindful attention on your object means that you are staying on the road. You are staying out of the left ditch of excitation, staying out of the right ditch of dullness. So, my friends and I lived in the Methow Valley for 25 years, up in Washington State, right below small, 2,000 people living in a 40-mile long valley, surrounded by, 5 million acres of, high quality, designated wilderness, national park, national recreation areas. Extraordinarily beautiful place, nobody there. So when I was younger, I used to, on a winter's night, close the bars down in Winthrop with my climbing buddies. And, we would always, for some reason, would say, keep her between the ditches on the way home. So when I was driving home, I was headed up valley towards Mazama, where I lived. And there was no traffic coming at all because the pass, at the end of the valley was closed, and nobody was coming this way. So keeping her between the ditches was easy, even if I was, somewhat drunk. The left ditch is over there, rumble strip. Right ditch over here, rumble strip. Okay, it's not that, you can keep her between the ditches on a 2-lane road, right? Even if your attention is slack, or, if it's slack for sure. If you're not that you're drowsy, but your attention is slack. So I would drive about 12 miles up this 2-lane road, but then I had to turn off the 2-lane road up a 1-lane road to get to where I lived, which was during this time was a mining cabin. I was a caretaker of a gold claim 2.5 miles up Goat Creek. So a 1-lane road, with a 50-foot drop off down to Goat Creek. Was I, taking it easy, tuning the radio, putting a new, whatever it was back in those days, probably those Compact, no, it wasn't
Eight-track.
compact. 8-track, because there sure wasn't any radio there. So, you know, was I half dozing then? Was dullness a problem then? Not like it was on the 2-lane road, you know, where I could just be cruising back and forth and have not a concern in the world, you know, be singing along. You know, my attention was becoming a lot more vivid on the 1-lane road. Why is that? Because the ditches were closer. You know, the left ditch was 1 lane away from the right ditch. Dullness was a lot closer, and there was a consequence. You know, a steep fall off. So my attention became more acute. So how far can you take that analogy? How about to Coxcomb Ridge on Mount Baker? So I used to guide on Mount Baker, and which is a Himalayan-like peak, you know, massive glaciers on it. And I've had a number of helicopter evacuations off there also. So how about on Coxcomb Ridge, which is a knife-edge ridge, where you've got 3 people roped together, and if one of you falls, you know, it's 2,000 foot off each side. Any problem with falling asleep there? Dullness a problem? Excitation a problem? Am I thinking about next week's date with my new girlfriend? Or am I thinking about last week's date with my old girlfriend? No, I am focused on the present moment on that knife-edge ridge, right? This is what the situation requires of your attention. So this is what adrenaline junkies are all about, right? You place yourself in a situation where you're not falling asleep and you're not distracted. People like to be single-pointed. So we'll put ourselves in a situation like that. Okay, now we're going off into not extreme skiing, not extreme whatever it is they do around here. How about extreme meditation? Where do you go from the knife-edge ridge? Can the ditches get closer than that? How about the high wire? So let's say I've got a 1/4-inch cable that is strung up, you know, like the Great Walenda, you know, over some canyon. And you have excitation and dullness with you. You know, these are not separated by a 2-lane road, a 1-lane road, or even a knife-edge ridge. Your attention has to be finely balanced, precisely balanced. So you inhale clarity. What happens? Whoa! Relax. Whoa! Clarity. Whoa! Relax. Oh, dullness. You know, so you're constantly noticing because your breath has that much power to relax you and to supply clarity. So much of it that when you're that finely balanced on the high wire, it will knock you off into excitation if instantly on the next out breath you don't supply the antidote of relaxation. And what is the product of that? Just like, you know, more extreme than Coxcomb Ridge, you are not falling asleep. You are not thinking about tomorrow or yesterday. You are fully engaged with the present moment. So, to do that, we talked about this evolution of watchfulness. So watchfulness was first a tow truck, then it became a sentry. So if the sentry is going to check in every 7 breaths, that could help you on the 2-lane road. You know, maybe not, probably not. You know, so at least it's got to be a rumble strip there, you know, and let you know when you're about to go into the ditch. But it sure isn't going to help you on the high wire. If you're checking in every 7 breaths, you'll be scraping you up off the bottom somewhere. So, how do you do that? How is that possible? How do you notice excitation and clarity, or excitation or dullness in real time? Does that mean that watchfulness has become your meditation? That in the way that you didn't want to do it at level 1 because it's a total distraction then? Or is something else going on now? So to pull this off, if you're going to go, even on a 1-lane road, you had better be checking in more than every 7 breaths. So there's a clue to this. In one of these golden gems of Pabanka Rinpoche in his quiescence section that I've never heard explained or glossed or whatever, but when you're kind of primed for it, it's golden. He says that you need to turn your watchfulness from a sentry into a motion detector. So how do you do that? How do you train the sentry to become a motion detector? And if we could, boy, wouldn't that help us to get to level 3 from level 2? Where level 3, you are on your object more than you are off your object, because watchfulness is becoming so finely tuned that it is letting you know when you are losing your object, rather than waking up 10 minutes later. And then because you're able to then patch the gaps, it's called. You return to your object and you still have stable momentum so that you don't have to kind of restart from 0 finding your object. So you patch the gaps. That requires on a very refined level of watchfulness. So how do you train your watchfulness to become a sentry? This is maybe the most important thing that you can possibly learn. How do you train your watchfulness to become a motion detector? You need to add a 4th R to your reflex. So we said that when you discover that you have become distracted, that you have become shanghaied, the 3 R's of your new reflex are to release your grasp on the object, recognizing that you have grasped onto a desirous object. Now we're going to add a new R. The second thing that you do now is to rejoice. Sukha, a moment of sukha, or 2 moments of sukha. You go, I am lucid again. This does a couple of things. The distinction between where you are now, where you have become lucid again, and where you were when you were distracted, is exactly what you really want to notice. This is the key to your meditation, is noticing what this lucidity feels like. And what you're doing then is taking a moment to rejoice, be happy, pat yourself on the back a bit what you're doing is, 1, recognizing this condition of lucidity, but what you're really doing is training your watchfulness, which in this case now we can really begin to talk about introspective awareness. What you're doing is training your awareness what is important. So you do this by, awareness is trained by what you attend to, what the habits of your attention are. So for instance, if I decide that I am in the market, I don't have a car now, and let's just say hypothetically that I decided that I was in the market and I had some cash. Both are very hypothetical. But I decided that I wanted that red Toyota Tundra pickup. And so I, am looking on CarMax, I'm, looking at consumer reports and all of that stuff, and I said, yeah, that's the one. And it's got to be red. You know, this is in my price range. You know, I knew, you know, that's it. And you know, at some point, well, maybe I can't afford it quite yet, but you know, after the next workshop, you know, I'm gonna buy myself a Toyota red Tundra pickup. So I'm walking down the street, and all of a sudden, here comes a red Toyota Tundra pickup. A week ago, I would not have noticed it, right? It would have passed me by without the slightest attention from me. But now, because I have been attending to red Toyota pickups, now everyone just jumps out at me, and I look at it, you know, and I inspect it from every angle, you know. So this is exactly what we're doing with this lucidity, is we are training when we because it's a very distinct difference. The first moments of lucidity when you return from your distraction are just powerful and key. So you just really notice those, and then the moment of sukha, that pleasure, is training your awareness to become a motion detector, because it realizes this is really important to me. So that's how you do it. You add, so you now have the 4 R's. When you've been distracted, you release your grasp on the distracting object, you rejoice, I am lucid again. Then you return to your chosen object, tactile sensations of breath at the tip of the nose, and then you deepen your relaxation on the next out breath. So this then I call this evolution of watchfulness or introspective awareness then I call making watchfulness a close companion of mindfulness. Making watchfulness a close companion of mindfulness. So you're no longer so it's become a motion detector, and it is hovering along with your mindfulness, and that's how you can know that you are almost so much clarity that it's going to tip you off into excitation, so much relaxation that it's going to tip you off into dullness. So how does that work? You can only have, because you're focused on tactile sensations of the breath, you can only have one thing in your attention at a time, right? How can you, it sounds like you have 2 here. You have your focus on the tactile sensations of the breath, and you know exactly what's going on instant by instant. Is it enough clarity? Is it too much clarity? Is it enough relaxation? Is it too much relaxation? How is that possible? It might not make sense now. We'll get into it a little more, but I feel like, I don't know, for some reason I feel like I should just say this now. So when you achieve level 4 stability, you no longer lose your object entirely, right? What is that? But you, so this is the first time then where a whole new, something that few meditators have ever experienced really becomes manifest. And that is the phenomena of medium excitation. So coarse excitation, you are losing your object entirely. You know, you have tuned your radio to National Public Radio 91.5. You go around the curve into a new cove and Rush Limbaugh is there. So in this case, with medium excitation, you go around the curve and you hear both of them simultaneously. But Rush Limbaugh, because it's the unchosen one, is the louder voice. But you haven't lost National Public Radio altogether. So this is said that, so it's not simultaneous though. You can say one is out here in peripheral attention. And the one that's in the center is, you know, the main object that dominates your attention. But because it is medium excitation, meaning that you're not stable on your object, it's an unchosen object that's in dead center in the target, but hovering out here is your chosen object. So what if it's possible, and then what you do is you are toggling back and forth. So what you're doing then is you're patching the gaps in peripheral attention out here so that you can say that you haven't lost your object altogether. So it's not that you have both simultaneously, but you're going back and forth and you're patching the gaps in each of them. So this is how it's possible for watchfulness to become a close companion of your mindfulness. Your chosen object would be in the center of your target. Your introspective awareness is out here in peripheral awareness, we'll call it now, rather than peripheral attention. And then you're patching the gaps, going back and forth, so that you're essentially getting real-time information about, because I think tomorrow we'll go into this, but you can have up to 50 ascertaining moments of cognition per second. That's very close to 64 per finger snap. But that's what cognitive in the laboratory what is discovered now. 50 moments of ascertaining cognition. So 50%, or so 20 milliseconds, 50%. So you could theoretically toggle 50 times per second. And that's why it could feel like you have two things in attention. I mean, it takes very stable attention to do that because you're patching the gaps in each of them, right? Okay. All right. Anybody want to go up on the high wire? Let's do it. And if you like, why don't you go ahead, because we don't want you to be distracted if you need to use the restroom. And again, you can choose your favorite position. release all memories of the past and all fantasies of the future. And withdraw your attention from the surroundings in the room into the domain of your body. And there give your full moment-to-moment bare attention to tactile sensations only. Noting first that feeling of solidity and firmness where you contact your seat or the floor. Then give your moment-to-moment bare attention to tactile sensations wherever they arise in the body. Be it an itch on the surface or some trembling sensation deep in a tissue. And if you note any tension or any pain, let your breath be drawn to it as if magnetically. And then release that tension or pain on the out-breath. Deepening your relaxation as if with an inaudible sigh. Note the amount of clarity that you have at the beginning of your meditation. And if your attention begins to soften and drift towards dullness or drowsiness, inhale clarity. Now, having established a base of relaxation and balanced that with clarity, inhale deeply and fully. Take 3 deep, full breaths. And note tactile sensations wherever they arise in your body, associated with the breath. Now give your attention a target by focusing on tactile sensations of the breath at the abdomen. Noting the beginning and the end of each in-breath and out-breath. With with the rise and the fall of the abdomen. Now shift your attention to the more subtle tactile sensations of the breath at the tip of the nose. Let your attention be a stable gatekeeper there. Noting the passage of the air in and out while remaining itself unmoved. The key to stability is the exhalation. Give it your full attention to the final instant before the pause. If you notice that your attention has been shanghaied, release your grasp on the distracting object. Rejoice. I am lucid again. Return to your chosen object, tactile sensations at the tip of the nose, and relax ever more deeply on the next out-breath. While giving your full moment-to-moment attention to tactile sensations of the breath. Notice the increase of clarity with each in-breath. And notice the deepening relaxation with each out-breath. Like a tidal wash onto the shore and sucking back into the ocean. It's the oscillation of clarity and relaxation. The length of your meditation session is one cycle of in-breath and out-breath. Any questions or comments about that? Yes, Bob?
Yeah, I have a question. I wasn't being distracted this time by the narrative as much as I hear music. I hear auditory distractions.
Yeah.
And it's much harder to let that go than the discursive thought. The discursive thought's like, okay, it's easier to let that go than an auditory background noise. Even though I can still feel the attention on the nose, but is there an easier way to banish the distractions of the auditory? It's usually pieces of music I've been listening to earlier in the day.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, so tomorrow will be a full day of instruction about what to do with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a friend who was one of my college roommates who was doing that same thing. He was composing music constantly in his mind, and it was a big distraction for him, and it was driving him crazy. And he did this workshop in Portland a couple of months ago, and he said, so with what we're going to be doing tomorrow, it was the first time that he had ever been able to turn it off when he wanted to. Yes?
I think you clarified it for me right before we started meditating, but when you're focusing on inhaling the clarity and exhaling the relaxation, that's sort of a peripheral focus, where your primary focus is still on the sensations of the breath in your ears.
Right. The primary focus is the tactile sensations. And hovering out there in peripheral awareness is, how am I doing? And you're toggling back and forth as quickly as you need to, depending on the circumstance, whether you're on a one-lane road, a knife-edge ridge, or on the highway. Yes.
I have a little bit of a hard time not trying to control the breath. Is it okay to, would it be okay to put your hand on your stomach to know what it's doing? Or is that putting more focus on it?
You have trouble trying not to control the breath? Is that what you
Yeah.
said? And yeah, so that's the thing about this, is that it's I kind of lay out some experimental parameters, and then check it out and see whether maybe that would be helpful for you to give you another tactile sensation on the palm of your hand of the rise and fall. So check it out. So there aren't many rules.
See, when you say breathing clarity, it makes me want to take a deep breath.
Right.
Oh.
You're conscious of your breath.
So-
We're not supposed to be inhaling clarity now.
Yeah.
Now it's
Well,
supposed to be exhaling.
I better take a real big one.
Yeah. So so don't do that. Thanks for mentioning that. But what that means is focus on the tactile sensations of the inhalation and notice the increase in your clarity while not controlling the breath.
Not taking a deep breath.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. So that's the weird thing. How do you increase clarity? So some instructions will say you visualize a bright object like the sun. But you don't do that. All you do is you focus on tactile sensations. And you then can't help but notice the increase in your clarity without saying, "Come on, clarity, I need you." And trying to imagine because that then becomes like a conceptual elaboration of clarity and imagining I'm getting brighter now or something. But you remain focused on tactile sensations and notice the increase in clarity, or notice the deepening of your relaxation, breath by breath, and even beginning of breath to end of breath. Beginning of breath, at the end of breath, your clarity is so much greater than the beginning of your breath that it's threatening to tip you off the high wire. And will, if you don't remedy it immediately with the next out breath. How is your experience standing there?
It's less comfortable than sitting, so the discomfort makes it less, the dullness less, it weakens the dullness,
Yeah,
the effect of the dullness.
That's exactly what it's supposed to do. It takes more musculature, more tension, it's less comfortable. Yeah. You can't relax so much.
Yeah.
Good. You probably would like walking meditation. Or you've done walking meditation. Does that work better?
Yeah.
So these techniques then will take you all the way to level 4 of stability. You can achieve level 4 with just everything that we've done today. Not just in one more day of practice, but applying these in your daily practice and adding some nice long retreats will take you to level 4. This is basically the only techniques that you need, pretty much, and then you'll refine them. And I'm not saying that these are the only techniques that will do that for you, but this is sufficient. Focusing on tactile sensations of the breath will lead you to a point where you are no longer losing your object completely. So this for an hour So at this point. So at the worst, your chosen object would be hovering in peripheral attention, for an hour, and then you're patching the gaps. So that's pretty remarkable. And then tomorrow we'll talk about where would you go from here once you have achieved stability and you are no longer losing your object. And where then at this point, because a whole new set of more subtle obstacles will present themselves to you, what is a more subtle object that you would take then to combat, again, to demand more acuity of your attention, to combat these more subtle obstacles of appearing here? Then would be medium dullness and subtle dullness, along with medium excitation and subtle excitation. So we'll be shifting then to the more subtle object of the appearances within the space of the mind then, tomorrow. And that is quite exhilarating, extremely exhilarating, and produces what you will notice will be the outcome of your attention on the high wire also, is great vividness. So flight is even more vivid than the high wire. So without any more questions or comments? Yes?
Question about retreats. I guess maybe it's something we can take offline. I'm not really sure how to decide whether 1 day, 3 days, what would be the frequency that would be most helpful when you're in around stage 1, stage 2, trying to get maybe to stage 3. How do you use retreats?
Well, I think that 10 days is kind of a nice minimum. Is that, well, a nice minimum, but it's not an absolute. You can do retreats for a day, but that's kind of like a Sabbath. Or you can do a retreat for 3 days or so. But what you'll notice is that 10 days is a nice short retreat. Because as I noticed when I was out backcountry skiing for 30 days and when I was guiding even 2-week trips, that something really different happens at 10 days. It feels like you've been doing what you're doing for long enough so that it becomes your known world, more or less. And everything that came before that is just kind of a memory of your past life or something. So it's nice to do a minimum of 10 days because you just kind of get to feel what that's like. And then 14 days, then you are able to cruise a little bit on that. If you can do a month, that's good, because then you have a chance. You notice in a month that days like 17 to 23 are really a sweet spot. So then you might say a month is a minimum, nice minimum meditation or retreat. And then if that's not long enough, people in 3-year retreat now are doing 2.5-month deep retreats because they're finding that to be really, 1 month wasn't long enough. But 10 days is good, So that's what the retreats Shamatha retreats that I've been leading are all based on this technique. So what I've been doing is traveling around to places, all up and down the West Coast and East Coast, and doing the Shamatha workshop, and then about 4 to 6 months later coming back and doing a 10-day Shamatha retreat. And then people, because here it's all talk and you get to meditate for just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then there it's just a little bit of talk, and then it's just a lot of 24-minute sessions, doing up to 18 Gantikas in a day. So that's about 8 hours of meditation. over 9 hours. You know, so and it works beautifully. You know, because you don't get wiped out. You feel good right up to. A lot of people will report that the last. So they start at 6:30 in the morning, go to 8:30 at night, and people will report that the last session of the day was the best. You know, that's pretty amazing. With that, so you are able to meditate for long, for a lot of sessions during a day without getting wiped out, and having quality throughout. But we can talk more about how you can do the Gatika system also on the end of the day tomorrow, for how you would, if you had a one day, how would you structure that? Because you might want to do that here at the center also. A Sabbath is really nice, where you just spend a whole day, you know, say, okay, we're going to do 3 Gatikas this afternoon. You know, it's very nice. People are doing that around places, Mahasuka, Vancouver, doing that now. Asheville. Okay, so thank you so much. I know it's been a long day. You are, I hope that you learned something about how to have a different kind of practice. And tomorrow will be something. So everything today, you know, you may have, probably it's a little different approach, but you know, it's within the known realm. Tomorrow is a little different. Tomorrow we get into, these practices have all been based in the Theravadan, and then tomorrow we go off into Nyingma tradition. So settling the mind in its natural state from Padmasambhava, and kind of landing right on the doorstep of Dzogchen. So it's very exhilarating. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. As many of you can come at 12:30. Have a good night. And keep her between